Youth sports can be really hard, especially if you're wanting to raise your kids in ways that produce healthy adults when they're done playing. Each week on Healthy Sports Parents, we have conversations designed to help you keep your athlete mentally and emotionally healthy. Whether you're just starting out in rec ball or you're traveling every weekend to elite tournaments, we're here to help you strengthen your relationship with your kids through sports. If we haven't met, my name is Jonathan Corona and I'm the host of the show. Today we're joined by Coach Adam Godwin. Adam is currently an assistant women's soccer coach at the University of Florida. Before that, he was a head men's soccer coach at a Division III school. Before we get to our conversation today, I want to tell you an interesting story about the uniqueness of Adam's coaching journey. After he was done playing, he was a Division I player and then had a couple tryouts after college for pro teams. Adam got into coaching as an assistant. When that job came to an end, before he moved to a new soccer coaching job, he actually spent something like 5 years working for a Division I football, American football, a program in their recruiting department. That's when I first met Adam. So here he is. Adam is from England, and he had no clue what went into American football. He only knew what we call soccer. But he's now working as a recruiting assistant in Division I football. So while he was doing that, he was moonlighting as an academy coach training youth soccer players. So just like it's important for your kids to be playing multiple sports and getting to know all those, Adam will tell you that those years working in football absolutely impacted his coaching career in soccer once he moved back onto the field. And we'll probably talk about that a little bit in this conversation, but I wanted you to have the backstory so you weren't confused before we got there. Before we get to that conversation, though, I've got to do the logistics. If you like the show, please leave us a rating and review wherever you listen. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, it'd be a huge help if you left a small review there as well. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And lastly, if this episode helps you in any way, the best thing you can do for us is to share it with a friend. Now, with all that out of the way, let's say hello to Coach Adam Godwin. We're here with Coach Adam Godwin. Adam, great to see you. Go ahead and say hey to the people.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. Thanks, John, for having me. Really excited to see you.
So before we get into Coach, this is my favorite thing to ask on here. I want to meet Dad. Let's let people meet Dad. I've known Dad for a while, but these people don't know Dad yet. So tell us a little bit about your kids, what they play, and people can probably guess by your voice what they might play, but what it's like being Dad to them.
Yeah, Charlie, Dad had two boys, and they are all boy. Charlie is 9, Jack is 6, and they're superstars, man. We're really blessed by them. They're good boys. They're handfuls, but they're brilliant. They're really brilliant kids. Both play soccer, which sometimes honestly I feel guilty about because it became pretty apparent to me as the kids were growing up that I only watch soccer. So, me and John worked together at Liberty University football for a long time, and I was the only guy that would come into the staff meeting in February, and everyone would be, "Hey, did you watch the game last night?" I'm like, "What game?" Like the Super Bowl. I'm like, "Yeah, no, I didn't catch that." So we.
I'm going to tell the story real quick. I also walked into your office one day. You're a Villa fan. I walked in carrying a Liverpool jersey just because they were playing that day, and we were the only two in the building who knew what was going on with that.
Yeah, you're lucky I didn't throw you out. But yeah, so the boys get a steady diet of only soccer, and I've asked them, like, do you want to sign up for basketball camp or what? They're like, no. So they love soccer, passionate about it. We are, to John's point, we're Aston Villa fans. So I feel like we're in a really golden moment because Aston Villa are finally good, so we can bond over our team being good.
Instead of sadness.
That's right. They're half English, half American, but they root for the English national team. And we're in this time when the English national team is really good. So there's a lot of reasons to really enjoy our soccer together. And so yes, that's what we do.
So one of the things that has kind of been a theme, the first couple of people we've talked to, is this idea of when to push kids and when to just let them be kids. So my guess is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I've kind of watched Charlie's journey a little bit from what you've posted. Like he was all in from day one. Like he was the kid who wanted to be good pretty much right away, right?
Yeah, he's kind of a leader and very confident, and wants to not in the wrong way. Wants to be the best at everything,
right.
As a lot of boys that age do, and So yeah, and that's an interesting way to frame it. I had always wondered as a parent, like, at what point do you have to push? Because having been, yeah, listen, I've been a coach for like 18, 19 years. I've only been a dad for 9, and obviously a sports dad for like 3 or 4, maybe, so I'm a rookie at the sports dad thing. But I've seen the other side of it where, to your point, yeah, you see parents push either too soon or too often or too hard. And I've always wondered, gosh, there must be a real tension in that, because you probably do get to a point where you're like, if I don't push a little bit, then they're not going to push themselves hard enough. So I think with Charlie in particular, because he's my oldest, we got to a point where he was, I don't know if lucky is the right word, but when we lived in Virginia, we now live down in Florida. When we lived in Virginia, I ran a soccer academy. And so when he became the age to start playing, I wasn't thrilled about the local sports club. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start teams, a little closed league. So I was able to produce an environment that I thought was really healthy and really good, and he really enjoyed it. Dad was the coach, so that was really, really great. And we moved along in a good direction for about 18 months or so. Then we moved down to Florida. Don't have a soccer academy down here, so moved him just into the local sports club, and it was really poor. And he actually quit soccer. Even just the training was poor, wasn't very well organized. And yeah, I had that experience where we were in the car on the way home. I was like, Dad, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't like it. And to be frank, it was so poor, I couldn't really argue with him. He didn't enjoy it in the fall, but I kind of pushed and made him do it in the spring. And with all parents, we're like, listen, if we start something, we're going to finish it.
Right.
But I actually let him quit in the spring, because in reality, he only did the spring because I kind of made him do it. So I didn't feel like he was quitting something he had signed up for. He kind of was quitting
Mm-hmm.
something I'd pushed him into. And I was like, you know what? It's so poor. I don't really blame you. It wasn't fun. It wasn't enjoyable. It wasn't well organized. So anyway, so that was that. So then we went through the summer, and I was like, oh man, I really don't want my kid to. He's gonna have to do something.
Yeah.
So anyway, he basically said, okay, Dad, I'm only playing if you're my coach. I'm thinking, well, for goodness sake, now I've got to coach like the U9 Grasshoppers and the Florida Gators. This is going to be a challenge, you know. So, but I really wanted him to play and have a really good experience. I was like, yeah, I'll do it. So I couldn't coach his team on the weekends, but I could run practices. So that was good. And thankfully he then just kind of caught fire with it. That was enough to bridge the gap back to enjoyment. And yeah, he hasn't looked back. It's been a really fun. So I guess I stopped coaching at the start of this year. What are we? November 2024. So I kind of stopped coaching in January of this year, and thankfully the enjoyment has continued. And we're just coming off the back of a really fun tournament. Out of town tournament, stayed in a hotel. They won the tournament. He scored the winning goal in the championship game. So right now the boy thinks he's Lionel Messi, and he's happy. So yeah.
So the unfortunate side of things is the bad rec situation, the bad league situation is far too common. There's 1,000 reasons that go into that, but having been through it and experienced it, obviously there's a little privilege for Charlie there because he's got a Division I dad that could step in and coach. For the parents who, like, I'm going through a situation right now where my daughter didn't have the best year because of some similar things, and we're trying to figure out, like, I don't want her to stop playing on a bad note. If she doesn't want to play after fourth grade, I'm fine with it. Let's just go out on a good. So we're going to drive about 20 to 25 minutes once a week to practice so she can play with some friends. Rec league still, but it's a better league or a better situation for her, just so that she can get a good last experience if that's her last experience. So what would you suggest for parents who are in that situation where kid loves the sport, local situation isn't great, and they feel kind of hamstrung because they're not a coach themselves, so they can't jump in and fix it?
Yeah, I think first of all, I love what you said. You're going to drive a little bit further so she can play with her friends. Perfect. Kids, we only do anything because we enjoy it, because we do it with our friends. Um, hopefully that leads to passion, and the passion will therefore lead to perseverance, so that when things get tough,
Yep.
they'll push through it. But it has to be fun for us before it becomes a passion, before any perseverance can come. So there was a really good little video that was doing the rounds on social media maybe about a year ago. There's this Irish golfer, and kind of the question to the golfer was, "Hey, I understand your dad kind of got you into golf, and kind of the same thing. Like, what did he do that drove you to this place where now you're this PGA Tour golfer?" I can't remember which golfer it was, but and what he talked about was, my dad just made sure it was really fun. And he said, so for example, we made sure on the ninth hole we got a drink. I got a can of Coke at the ninth hole, and so I was really excited. I was going to get that can of Coke, and then when we finished, we always went to the clubhouse, and he just let me have some ice cream or some candy out of the machine, or so it became this little fun. There was this little, whether you want to call that a little carrot you're dangling at the end of it or whatever it is, but it just became way, way more than just the golf. It was an event. Like, go do this with my dad, and at the end, we're gonna have a little bowl of ice cream with him, and we're gonna sit and we're just gonna have a good time. And so yeah, I think that's a lot of it. Just, are they doing it with people they like? Hopefully, it's a coach that, if he can't make it great, he can, or she can, make it fun.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, I do think that sports is often, it's not about being a great fourth grader. It's about being a pretty competent 10th, 11th, 12th grader, And so, yeah,
I've
don't
said all along,
worry.
I would rather have a 17-year-old daughter who's still playing because she loves the game and
Yes,
playing in high school than to
yes.
have the best 9-year-old in the world.
That's
Like,
1,000% right. The best player on my boys' team, my kids, Charlie's team, I don't know if he's still going to be playing in 2 years' time. He's really good right now. I don't know if he's going to still be playing in 2 years. So yeah, it is, and that's how I've always coached. My number one goal is, I want people to love the game as much as I do, because I love the game. It's brought me to the other side of the world. I'm 42 years old. I had my cleats on in practice today, trying to hit the crossbar, trying to jump into the 4v4s, and I'm 42. And I'll be doing it when I'm 72. And that's all I want out of the players that I get to coach. I just want them to love the game. So yeah, how can you make it more than just, you're going to practice, you're playing a game, you won or you lost? It's got to be. Can you make it more than that? As a parent, as a family, um, my 6-year-old plays, and what I really love about the team that my 9-year-old plays on is, my 6-year-old is like the mascot. He's like the number one fan, the mascot. When it's game time, it's like, well, what do you want to wear? Do you want to wear your Aston Villa jersey or your England jersey? No, I want to wear my team jersey, because he plays for the younger teams. And then after they won the tournament, he's in the team pictures. Like,
that's
he's
so
in the team
great.
pictures with the team. And yeah, like, it's more than just this thing we've created, or the people are so good, they've managed to create way more than just soccer. Now it's this, they look forward to seeing each other and miss each other when they don't see each other, and stuff like that.
So that's the, let's say, under 12 mindset. Like, let's make the kids love the sport, help them fall in love with the sport, and then the perseverance and the grit will kind of hopefully develop almost in itself. But now let's fast forward to, let's put the coach hat on. Like, you're going to tournaments regularly of high level players who are 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. For the parents who are in that realm, who are pushing their kids through high school soccer, who are in club ball, who are playing ECNL or MLS Next, or for baseball, it's the national tournaments, for basketball, it's whatever the sport is, those high level tournaments. What do you see from parents that correlates to the healthiest kids out there that you're watching? Maybe they won't end up playing at Florida. Maybe they won't end up playing Division I or at the highest level, but you watch them and you see that they love playing, they love competing. They just seem like well-rounded kids. What do you see any correlation between the parents of those kids and those kids themselves?
Yes, I think, I've coached college for a lot of years, and I probably coached far too many players that when the final whistle went, they never wore a pair of cleats ever again. And a lot of that was, I think, kind of parent driven, where these kids in the end were playing at a pretty high level of soccer to please mum or dad. Um, and so I think the parents have to ask themselves the question, like, why are we doing this? Are we doing it for my own ego, as a parent, or am I doing this because this is what my kid loves and is passionate about? I'm a pretty firm believer that our job as parents is to facilitate our children's passions, whatever that is. Our job is to facilitate what our children are passionate about. And so, as a parent, that might just be drive them to and from practice, drive them to and from games. Yeah, that might mean, unfortunately, in the pay for play world that we live in the States, that might mean I got to do DoorDash or something to like pay for that pair of cleats or pay so my kid can be on that team. And obviously, I hate that aspect of it. But how can I facilitate what my kids are passionate about? And then after that, it's just trying to support that, and the simplest way you can say that is after a game is, hey, kid, I loved watching you play today. I tell my boys all the time, like, Dad, who's your favorite soccer player? We have these arguments, Messi, Ronaldo, whatever it is. I tell them, you guys are my favorite soccer players. Like, I love watching you guys play more than anyone in the world. And so, yes, but I've just had a meeting with a player now, and she's in tears talking about the pressure her parents put her under. When she doesn't get enough playing time, when she is perceived to not play well enough. So you can imagine that additional stress on an athlete who is already nervous and having to go, crossing the white line is stressful enough,
But if
competing
she's
against
playing
an
at
opponent.
if she's playing at Florida, she's already one of the best in the
Right,
country by
right.
far.
She's already in the top
Like,
0.5%, if she's playing
yeah.
here, so then it becomes about, okay, then it's about the parent, and that's not healthy. Parents living vicariously through their kids. There's probably lots of examples of that in lots of different places. But yeah, what I love, and it's a challenge because what I've learned is in a couple of different ways. It's very hard to see beyond love. Like, you see the person you love, and it's hard to then become rational about anything on the outside. But yeah, I look at the parents here. The parents I love the most here at Florida are the ones that come every single game and they don't know if their kid's going to play or not. There's other parents that come, and when their kid's not in the starting lineup, all of a sudden they stop showing up. And I think, gosh, that's really sad. That's happened at other places I've coached, Liberty and things like that, and I'm like, again, my goal, and I certainly hope my lifestyle allows me to come and watch my kids play when they play in college and things like that. But I'm going to show up whether my kid plays or not, mainly because I just want to see my kid. But I want them to know that we support them unconditionally, whether they play or whether they don't. And when they don't, sure, I'm going to come alongside them and try and help them and see if I can, do anything to help fix that a little bit. Generally speaking, like if my kid played basketball, I couldn't help. So yeah, the parents that support unconditionally, that's again, I'm going to talk about myself a little bit. Like, again, I grew up in England. I came all the way to the other side of the world as an 18-year-old, didn't know anybody, and now 20 or so years after that, here I am at the Florida Gators. Like, I've just managed to keep going, and the reason I've been able to do that is because I am loved unconditionally by my family. My parents loved me so much that I just believed I could do anything in the world. My siblings backed that up as well. They just loved and supported me unconditionally. In fact, I'm grateful enough to have an unbelievable wife who loves and supports me unconditionally. And because of that, I'm at the Florida Gators, and I've had my bumps, and along the road, I've been unemployed and lost jobs and fired and all these different things that come in the coaching profession. But what has allowed me to keep going and persevere is the unconditional love and support of my family. And without that, I would never have left England, let alone be in Gainesville, Florida.
And the interesting part of that, I mean, because I remember a couple years ago, our youngest was in speech class because he had a little bit of trouble saying some things. And one of the questions they ask, they go, "What is your goal for your child?" And I was like, "I want him to have every tool he needs to be a productive adult when he gets there."
Mm-hmm.
And the teacher was kind of shocked. Like, she hadn't heard someone say things like that. And like, you talk about, it's the love from your parents and your siblings that allowed you to get where you are at 42. Now, we have to put ourselves my 9-year-old, my 8-year-old,
Mhm.
like the two of them, like if I think long term, if I'm thinking about 22-year-old versions of them or 42-year-old versions of them, it changes the way I parent them through their sports now because I'm not trying to teach them to be the best player. I'm not caring if they score a goal or if they're the best defender or if they win the race or whatever. I'm
Yeah,
I'm parenting them a little differently because there's a different goal in mind.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think probably going back to the original question, a lot of sports parents parent their kids in, I've got to get this kid a scholarship, I've got to get this kid to D1 college, I've got to get this kid to whatever it is. That's that's not it, and that's not actually, that might not even be what they want. Like, yeah, our role is in the other ways of like, okay, am I doing a good enough job saving for college? Am I doing, like my job is just to facilitate their life as best as I possibly can. Um, and if the dreams I have for my kid are reliant on sports and them being good at sports, most people not fail. That's the wrong word, but most people won't make it. That's okay. Like, my goal, my dream was to be a professional soccer player. My mom and dad supported that. I never kicked a professional ball in my life. Never. I was about as good as you could possibly be without being a professional soccer player, but I never made it. But it was me driving it. It was me driving it. I was fortunate when I lived in Virginia with my soccer academy. I got to coach the number one player in the country. So coming out of high school, she was the bona fide national Gatorade player of the year, the number one player in the country. And I never forget her mom and dad said to me, they said, as long as she's dragging us out the door, we'll keep doing this. As soon as we're dragging her out the door, we're done. And this is the number one player in America, so, and she's still playing professional now. She's been graduate from college for 8, 9 years, still playing pro overseas, so, but again, it's her driving it. It's the kid driving it. And it's just mom and dad and siblings coming up behind them. Even my little 6-year-old, he had to give up his weekend to go watch his brother play, these are the unseen things that the kid doesn't know, but they shouldn't know that. I didn't know the sacrifices my parents were making for me when I was 9. They were just facilitating what I was passionate about, and thankful that things worked out for me.
So you mentioned the scholarship piece, and I think you have a really unique perspective because you're in the SEC now, which is top level Division 1, but you've also coached Division 3. And the scholarships there are wildly different. The financial opportunities are wildly different. Um, can you talk a little bit or describe a difference in just the outlook between the two? Because if you're playing for a scholarship at a D1 level, D3 might feel like it's a disappointment. But if you're playing D3, you're still one of the best soccer players or the best athletes in the country.
Yeah.
So this Division 1 or bust mindset that a lot of parents have, can you speak into that a little bit from your perspective, coaching both of them?
Yeah, I think probably the first financial thing I would tell everybody is even at the Division 1 level, the vast majority of your financial aid will come from academics, not from athletics. The number of players that get like a legitimate full scholarship is minuscule, minuscule. We won't get into the weeds of that. But I think, yeah, don't think to yourself, everyone that plays D1 gets a full scholarship. Now, I know the NCAA is going through some stuff right now where maybe that might be true one day, but generally speaking, the vast majority of your child's financial aid for college will not come from athletics, even if they are incredibly good at what they do. So don't be thinking it's like we're hitting the lottery, because it's not. I guess I can only talk maybe from a soccer perspective. But what is really interesting about Division 3, where I coached, was the level was incredibly high. I think in the 4 years I coached at Randolph College, I think we sent 4 players to play professionally in Europe, at a lower level, not in the Premier League by any means, but still getting paid to play, And the level was really high. I had to be really good. I'm coaching against good coaches, against good teams, with a good team, and it was really, really good. I honestly, I don't see an awful lot of difference at this level. I have to prepare the same way. I have to be as well prepared. Listen, there is talent difference is I can't go recruit Division 3 players to come play in the SEC. But to your point, I think if you make it to the college level at any level, you're a pretty good soccer player or whatever your sport is. The percentages are something only 3% of high school seniors go on to play college sports or something to that effect. That might vary a little bit through the sports. But
I've mentioned on here a couple of times that I am involved with my high school's baseball team. And a couple of years ago, we had two seniors graduate and go play in college. One's playing at Western Carolina, the other's playing at UNC Pembroke, which is a Division II school. Western Carolina's Division I. The one at UNCP could have gone Division I and been fine. He may not have been a star, but he went Division II as a freshman, was pitching and playing in the field. So he was playing both ways, which doesn't happen very often in general, and absolutely would not have happened at the Division I level.
Yeah.
So he went Division II where he could play as a freshman, and by the time he's a senior, he's going to be one of their best pitchers and probably a starting outfielder.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, and that's an ego thing, right? And so, what a humble young man, or what a really great place, a great level of self-awareness of like, he's probably talented enough to be on a Division I roster, but where do you want to be on that roster? You want to be at the bottom? Yeah, you can walk around with Western Carolina on your shirt, or you can walk around with the Gators on your shirt, but you're not playing. Or you could say, no, I want to go to a place where I can make an impact. Because at the end of the day, sports is for playing. It's not for walking around with the t-shirt on. Like, sports is for playing. And I really mean this. I loved my 4 years at Division 3 are my favorite 4 years of my career. I miss it every day. And I didn't think I'd ever miss anything ever again after coming to the Gators. It's like there's no hunger in paradise, but I miss it every single day. And so, yeah, that's really, really important. I think it's the Division 1 or bust mentality. For example, here we have a few, the players at the bottom of our roster over the course of 4 years will probably never travel. They'll never go to a road game, which means they'll only suit up 8-9 times per year. Home games is the only time they'll actually put the uniform on. And then the odds on them getting in the game will depend on, is it a blowout or not? Now, great, they get to walk around and say they were Gators for 4 years. But to your point, they could have gone to a quote unquote lesser program and played 75 games and been all conference and all American and really been able to use their talents and their abilities, which is really what we all want to do, So yeah.
So that gets back to what do you want? Those girls, obviously, they playing for the Florida Gators was what they wanted. They wanted the name across the shirt. They didn't want to be the big fish in a small pond. They wanted to be a smaller fish in a big pond. And I think one of the things it starts at the youth level. Does your kid want to play with their friends, or do they want to get better? You got to know the answer to that, because that determines how you push them.
Yeah.
When your kid's getting better, do they want to play as the big kid on the big school, even if they get no playing time, or would they rather play a ton and at maybe a quote unquote smaller school? And you have to know what your kids want out of the sport so that you can parent them to what, like you were saying, like to support the things that they want instead of doing it all what you want yourself.
Yeah, and I think the phrase that came into my mind as you were saying that is you have to play the long game. You have to play the long game here. Like, again, I'll use Charlie, my 9-year-old. He, for the first time in his life in the spring, they had tryouts. He's just made every team he's ever made before, but for the first time they had tryouts. And he was like, "Oh, I don't just make it." And I'm like, "No." And I knew it was going to be close. I don't know if he was going to make it. And he was the last kid on the roster. And if I'm really honest, if I wasn't his dad, I don't know if I think they did me a favor because I'd helped coach the team a little bit. They didn't say that to me, but I kind of got that feeling. So I did have a choice to make myself, because there is a B team. And I was like, okay, do I want him to be the last kid on the A team? Or do I think kind of being the stud on the B team would be better for him, where he gets a lot more playing time and this, that, and the other? And again, probably because, yes, the kid is really fortunate that he has a coach dad. I was like, I'm going to put you on the A team. I know I can help you. And it has worked out for him. He's kind of gone from the last kid on the roster to like first kid off the bench now, maybe sometimes starts. I'm really proud of him. But yeah, there's a world where, do you know what? At U9s or whatever he is, being on the B team is fine for a season, So and then because so he can be in a better position than
Hmm.
at U10s or whatever it is to go get on the A team or whatever it is. So, but if I'm only as a parent, if I'm only thinking about this fall, then my ego can get in the way, and I can be like, well, I want him to be on the A team. When it's not about that, again, it's about I got to coach or parent with the end in mind of like, well, if I want him to play pro soccer, if I want him to play college soccer, that's like 10 years into the future, and there's tons and tons of time. Don't get me wrong, there's some development milestones along the way, and each sport's going to look a little bit differently with that. But I'm not particularly concerned that at 9 my kid's not a world beater. I know he's got time. Now listen, if he gets to 12 and there's a few things he can't do, all right, some alarm bells will be ringing, and I'll know where he is on the time on the milestone path, if you know what I'm saying. But yeah, that's exactly it. Like you got to kind of know, coach with the end in mind, parent with the end in mind a little bit.
Well, it's like, I mean, the difference in you and I, your child has, so Charlie's 9, my son's 8. So they're playing probably the same division.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal for my son would be high school soccer.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably where he will cap out. If he caps out in high school soccer, I will absolutely love it. Your kid has some different abilities, comes from different genetics, comes from a different coaching background as well. So college is an option there. And so the way you're looking at your kid and parenting your kid is going to be different than mine. And just, I think part of that is being very honest about who and what your kid is.
Well, I'd encourage you with that though. First of all, Super John, I've seen you run, man. I've seen you move.
No,
You
you
don't put
haven't.
yourself
No,
in
you,
there.
no, you haven't.
um, sports for me, sports for me is all about opportunity. And so I'll tell a story of a guy that you and I both know. I love telling the story about Matthew Bevins. So Matt Bevins he was the kicker at Liberty University. And he was a freshman, my first year on staff. That'll surprise you. There was a British guy that worked in American football. It was a very confusing time for all of us. But anyway, Matt Bevins was true freshman kicker, really a soccer player, not really a football kicker, kind of a soccer player. Was supposed to redshirt. I think the game was on the road at Youngstown State,
Yep.
and the kicker on the team at the time was like a fourth, fifth year senior transfer. And in that game, he broke his leg. He kicked, and they had jumped the line, and he kicked the kid's helmet, and he broke his leg. So Matt Bevins has to come in. That game comes down to the last play of the game, the last kick, field goal for the
I
Flames.
remember where I was.
Right, maybe to win, maybe certainly win. I think the first top 25 win in the
Mm-hmm.
Rocco era. Um, Matt Bevins kicks it. It's good. Matt Bevins goes on to be a 3-time All-American. He, I think, is still the leading point scorer for the Liberty Flames football program. He was not supposed to be that guy. But opportunity comes. Are you ready? And Matt was ready and never looked back. And now he's like the chief of staff for Auburn football. And you can maybe pinpoint all of this down to that moment, something that he wasn't supposed to do. And so, to your point, listen, yeah, if your son makes it to the high school level, fantastic. But what we never know is, what does that unlock? What
Mm-hmm.
next level? What next opportunity? Whether that's physically, mentally, what does it unlock? And
Well,
again, that's
I'll give you
why.
an example for him. So, like, I'm a bigger dude. You know that.
Mhm.
Owen takes after me. He's a big kid. Like,
Yeah.
he's already like 98th percentile at 8 years old, like height,
Mhm.
weight, everything. He's gigantic. But about a year or so ago, he came to me and said, Daddy, I think I should be playing offense, not defense. I'm like, excuse you? And defense, once we moved up to a bigger field in 7v7, it was a little too fast for him. And so I gave him a shot, and come to find out, he knew where to be on the field.
Mhm.
And so his skills weren't there, but his brain was. And so that was his first season. His next season, he's playing center forward for me. And again, other kids on the team are faster, can dribble better, and all that, but he knows where to be, when to be there, and he's very smart for his age. So the kid scored like 15 goals in 8 games or something like that, just from being in the right spot. But he recognizes he's got to get faster and run better.
Yep.
So he actually came to us and asked if he could do some running stuff over the winter.
Love that.
So he's leading in that. Like we
Yep.
may have offered it to him, I don't know, but he right away said, "Yeah, I want to do that." And he
Yep.
keeps asking, "When does
Perfect.
that start? When does that start?" And so he sees, okay, I want to get better at this. And so, like you said, I'm going to facilitate that opportunity. It means driving 25, 30 minutes down the road because
Yep.
we're in a small town. We got to drive to the big town next door to do that. But at 8 years old, he's wanting to learn how to run properly.
Yeah, it's
If
brilliant.
I would have learned how to run properly at 8 years old, I may have kept playing, but
Right.
running hurt for me. And so I think back on just the difference of like letting him lead in that way so that I don't know what learning how to run properly at 8 is going to unlock in him in the future. It may be soccer. It may just be loving being active as an adult.
Yeah,
And if
yeah.
that's the case, that's a win
Perfect.
as well.
And I think that goes back to the original question of when do you push, or because at the end of the day, if you'd have said, "Hey, Owen, you need to get fitter and faster, man, you're gonna run," he'd be like,
That's insulting. I still think
yeah,
back to
that doesn't
people
sound so
telling me
fun."
that and how much that
Yeah,
impacted me.
yeah, and so again, so I think you go back. So if I'm thinking as a parent, it's like, okay, that sounds great. How do I get my kid to want to do that? My kid hasn't. My 8-year-old's not knocking on my door saying that.
Well, my 9-year-old daughter doesn't want to. She's the better
Right.
runner. And we asked her if she wanted to do it. She said no.
Yeah. So I think a lot of it is just trying to help grow their passion in the game. My boys watch soccer all the time. They get inspired by Jude Bellingham and Yamin Lamal and 16-year-olds playing for Spain, and so then they get curious. They're like, how does a 16-year-old play for his national team, Dad? And you can explain. Now you can start to use people to inspire them. Um, and then that hopefully then starts to bring some of their own ideas of like, okay, if I want to be that, then I probably got to do this. And then you get your son come and saying, "Dad, I think I'd like to learn how to run kind of properly and be a little fitter, a little faster." Amazing. Let's roll with that.
Yeah.
But again, from a parenting standpoint, how can I expose them to these really fun, cool things that might then ultimately inspire them on their own journey? Because that's what it's all about.
You've coached both men's teams and women's teams. A lot of people, dads coaching daughters, we don't know what to do sometimes. Moms coaching sons, we don't know what to do. They don't know what to do sometimes. So, what have you learned, big picture wise, the difference in coaching boys and coaching girls? How would you encourage a parent in that if they're unsure how to do that? Because obviously, moms don't know what it's like to be a boy, and dads don't know what it's like to be a girl.
Yeah, it's
Is there a difference?
there's obviously it's a funny thing because sometimes I think the differences are minuscule, and then sometimes I think that they're massive. I always used to joke around because I started in women's soccer and then went over to men's soccer, and I used to tell people
With a pit stop in football.
with a pissed off in football, but I said my job stress went down 80% when I went from women's to men's because a lot of it is just about soccer. I'm back in the women's game now, albeit at a very, very high level. And yes, there's more relationships about it. But do you know what? I always think this. What made me a really good men's coach was that I had coached women. And I think now what is making me a better women's coach is I've coached men. Because I
Okay.
do think there's a lot of real similarities there. At the end of the day, everyone just wants to be believed in. Everyone just wants to have someone that feels like they have someone in their corner and they are believed in. And so guy or girl, that's what they just want to feel like, man, they really believe in me. Everyone wants to be challenged, so yeah, there's some nuance to how you challenge, you know what I mean? And at the end of the day, you got to know your own kid a little bit. Like, I remember my Charlie was mortally offended one day when he said, "Dad, who do you think is the best soccer player? Who do you think is the best player on the team, Dad?" And I said who I said, and it wasn't him. He said, "I am really offended." I was like, "Kid, but it was my first opportunity to be like, yeah, like you're not quite where you think you are." But honestly, yeah, I think they want it to be important. You know what I mean? Like I think, but what's really difficult, let me say this. I'm working with pretty highly motivated people. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like I'm kind of working with the 3% that made it to college, whether it was Division 1 mid-major girls, Division 3 men, Power 5 women. I'm kind of working with pretty highly motivated people. So you do have to sort of figure your own kid out. And listen, yeah, some days how do I motivate my kids? Charlie wasn't scoring enough goals. I said, Charlie, I'll give you $1 every goal, every assist. I owe him $4 from the weekend. He got 2 goals, 2 assists. So I'm trying to figure out how do I motivate my kids? Yeah, you just have to know your own child. You kind of know what motivates them. You certainly probably know what doesn't motivate them, and that's probably the main thing. And I to be honest, I think, goodness me, up until probably about 12 years old, really what motivates your kid is you being so excited to be on the journey with them and taking them to practice and getting a little ice cream afterwards. Not every practice, I understand that, but making game day enjoyable for them. Also, what I mean by is not yelling and screaming at them. And I know that's a whole podcast in and of itself, parent behavior on game day. But I've worked with men's football, Division I men's football. At the end of the day, I think about Danny Rocco, who was the head football coach. He just loved and cared and believed in his guys. And those guys would have stood in front of a train for him,
You and I would have stood in a train for him.
Yes,
we were office workers.
No doubt. I've never worn a helmet in my life. I was ready to put a helmet on and go get hit by some huge lineman, And it was.
He stopped me on the first day of training camp one day. We had a bunch of defensive linemen hurt. He's like, "Hey, Jonathan, you want to suit up today?" And I'm like, "God, no, but coach, if you ask me to, I guess I will for you." Yeah. I mean, he never would, but it was just like, that's how much I would have done for him, because even as just a student worker, I knew he cared about me.
Yeah, that's it. And your kid just has to know, Dad, do you care about me if I score a goal? Do you care about me if I play a ton of minutes? Do you care about me if I don't play? Are you still excited to come and just be with me and be in this experience? There's a young lady, she's just about to graduate on our team. She's got a wonderful relationship with her dad. And it's always interesting, these kids, they've all got tattoos and things like that. And she's got a tattoo of a shark, not anything elaborate, little shark. I was like, "Oh, what's your shark tattoo?" She said, "Oh, it's me and my dad's thing." And their whole thing is like, go take a bite out of someone, like be a shark, And so he texts her before every single game. He's at most every game. He travels from Ohio to come and watch most every game. But like sometimes he'll be in the stands with like a shark balloon, and it's clearly this thing that it's probably been a thing since she was 8 years old, but Dad is going to show up and it's this, I'm going to be a shark today and I'm going to take a bite out of someone. And it's this lovely thing, and I learn an awful lot from the parents, good and bad, that I see of the kids I coach. And that's a really lovely one. There's probably some stories like that I don't see, as well. But yeah, man, just love and believe in your kid, and just help facilitate what they're passionate about. And to be honest, they probably still won't make it because the numbers are just against them.
That's okay.
And that's okay, because did they love the game? Like, do you know what I dream about sometimes? Like, I can't wait to take my boys when they're 21 and 25 to England, to Villa Park, and to have a beer with them at Villa Park and cheer on our team, because that's what my dad did. My dad's 79. He's going to yell at me if I got that wrong, but the seminal moment in my life is when my dad took me to watch Aston Villa for the first time. It changed my life. Wasn't even really a soccer fan. Wasn't a soccer kid growing up. I was a super late bloomer to the game. My dad took me to watch the Villa. That night changed my life. I've been kicking a soccer ball since I was 9 years old because of that. And the experience of the stadium and the crowd and the noise was unbelievable. But it was going with my dad, and like, I'm 42 now. When I plan my trips home to England, the first thing I look at before I look at flights is the Aston Villa schedule, because I want to see if I can go to a game with my dad, and again, to be honest, I didn't really make it. I didn't make it, but it's like anything that, without getting too cheesy, you shoot for the moon and you'll probably land somewhere among the stars, but it's, at the end of the day, what helped me get here, the simplest way I can say it is love, like unconditional love from a lot of people. Certainly my family, certainly a couple of coaches that I was just blessed to have in my life, who believed in me more than I believed in myself. And that's got to be us as parents, man. We have to not foolishly, not naively believe. Don't think your kid's going to be Lionel Messi if he can't walk and chew gum at the same time. He's not going to be, but believe in your kids, man, because they're going to be your sons, they're going to be your daughters, even if they become professional players. And at the end of the day, the final whistle, the final buzz is going to go one day.
They're hanging them up someday, and you're still
they're hanging them up someday, and they're going to be your son, they're going to be your daughter, you're going to be their mum, you're going to be their dad. And what you really need is to make sure that the way you were as a sports parent doesn't negatively impact your relationship with them for your whole life. Because again, there's a few kids on this team, there's a few kids that I've coached. They have a more negative relationship with their parents than they would like because of the way their parents behaved during their sports careers. And that's really sad.
Yeah. That's a great place to end. Adam, thanks so much for hanging out with us today. I appreciate it.
Pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
That's it for today's episode. If you like the episode, please leave us a rating and review wherever you listen. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, it'd be a huge help if you left us a small review there. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Lastly, as always, we ask you, if this episode helped you in any way, the best thing you can do for us is to share it with a friend. We hope that you have a great time this week, whether you're at practice, you're at games, whatever it is. Enjoy the time you get able to watch your kid compete in the sport that they love. We hope you have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.